Welcome to this very exciting screening. Okay, for those of you who maybe are coming here for the first time, what the hell has kept you? I've been doing this for 26 years, and this is the first time you've shown up today. But you picked the right moment to show up. We have been showing a trailer for the Grifters for the last couple of days, and that trailer promotes heavily the fact that this is a Martin Scorsese production of a Stephen Frears film. But for my audience, the hardcore noir fanatics, the two names associated with this movie that carry the most weight for us are the original novelist, Jim Thompson, who is one of America's greatest writers of noir fiction, and the screenwriter of this film, Donald Westlake, who is one of a dozen or so of the absolute best crime fiction writers of all time. Donald Westlake is the guy who's also responsible for the original story of films like Point Blank that John Borman made in the 60s. And it was interesting to me that Stephen Frears and Scorsese tried to convince Donald Westlake to write the screenplay for the Grifters, and he at first turned it down because he said he just couldn't find anything to enjoy in these characters because they were all so despicable and reprehensible. Now, bear in mind, this is the guy who has written a series of books, the Hunter series, about a mercenary killer, assassin, thief, and he found nothing redeeming at all in any of the characters in this story. But he was eventually prevailed upon to write this fabulous screenplay, and what Mr. Westlake did not realize is that Stephen Frears was going to cast this film with one of the great ensemble casts ever in a crime movie. The secret of noir is that it makes you empathize with people that are doing the wrong thing, right? There, but for the grace of God, if I made bad decisions, I would end up like this, right? And he has a cast of nothing but those people, reprobates, but I'll be damned if you don't empathize with them because you have such marvelous actors in these roles. And what a treat it is to have one of them here with us today. This was the breakout film for a woman who is, I'm just going to say it flat out, one of the great actors of our generation, Annette Bening, who is in the house with us today. Five-time Oscar nominee. That's one more than the greatest actress in the history of motion pictures, Barbara Stanwyck. So, good job. And Annette will be joining me after the screening for a Q&A, and you'll know everything there is to know about the Grifters when you leave this theater today. But right now, I'm going to get the hell off the stage so you can watch this absolute masterpiece of neo-noir. Ladies and gentlemen, here is The Grifters. Obviously love our classic film noir from the golden age of Hollywood, but there are some stories that could not be told in the golden age of Hollywood, and that is one of them. So, without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I gave her a big intro at the beginning, and now that you've seen her in this spectacular breakout performance, please give it up for the marvelous Annette Bening. It's very special to have you here. You are so fabulous, and this. I have to ask, what have you? Has it been a while since you've seen this?
I think I watched it a few years ago on television, but not on a big screen like this. So, I suppose at the time I saw it on a big screen, but it's been a while. So it's great to see it with an audience too. It's wonderful to hear it be in the middle of everyone and watch it.
Exactly, and. What is that like for you to see yourself? That's 35 years ago you made this picture. Yes, and forgive me, but is it uncomfortable to see yourself in an audience with an audience this big? You are revealed in this movie, a spectacular way to break out in Hollywood, But does that occur to you? Is it odd to see your younger self on the screen?
No, I enjoy it. I enjoy it. Thank you. I feel bad for my poor father. My dad, he just died about a year and a half ago, and he was very conservative Republican, and I think this was very difficult for him. But he got over it. He got over it. But that bothered him. This was very different than me, and no, it was remarkable to watch it. I'm thinking about all kinds of things that have nothing to do with the film. I'm thinking about the time in my life, the time in Angelica's life. It's such a joy to see all of the actors. Pat Hingle, the great Pat Hingle, J.T. Walsh, and Angelica, I think, is just magnificent in this movie. I mean, she's done so many things, and she has more to go, but I think this is kind of my favorite. I think about all the things. As you said, Jim Thompson. What I think about is Jim Thompson, and I was lucky to have read a bunch of him at the time, and then I also found one of his autobiographies. I just looked him up today again on Wikipedia. What an interesting guy, and his, probably a lot of you know his books, and a number of them have been made into really great movies, and his history with his dad, who was actually a sheriff, who got into trouble and had to go to Mexico. And one of his great stories is called The Killer Inside Me, which is about a small town sheriff who is very well liked and is actually a violent psychopathic killer. Thompson was a great writer, and I remember reading at the time that he had been working in the oil fields as a kid. He was a severe alcoholic from the time he was very young, but he was reading the classics. And you can see it in this story, not only the narrative structure, but the Oedipal, the mythic level of even a movie like this. And it's interesting, in the original book, Carol, the nurse character, she's actually a real character in the novel. She's a Holocaust survivor, exactly. If I remember correctly. Yes. Yeah. And they ended up cutting her out of the screenplay. I don't think Donald Westlake ever put her in there because they wanted the triangle. But anyway, it's so important to acknowledge that it all comes from this original mind of Jim Thompson, who was an extraordinary writer and worked on a lot of movies. You probably know all of this. He didn't get a lot of credit for some of the movies that he worked on, but he was he came to Hollywood, and he had wrote a bunch of crime novels, but he also came to Hollywood and worked on a bunch of screenplays.
Correct. In fact, we showed one last night. We showed The Killing here last night, the Stanley Kubrick's film that Jim Thompson wrote the screenplay for that. And he actually lived right up the street for a number of years. I mean, he lived in this neighborhood for quite a while.
Is he uncredited on that? I think I just...
Well, the thing was, Jim Thompson wrote that screenplay.
Right.
But in the end, Kubrick only gave him the credit additional dialogue by
And
Jim
I think
Thompson.
He challenged it, and he
did. Well, it was a bone of contention between them, but Kubrick still hired him again, and Thompson wrote the screenplay for Paths of Glory, which is a fantastic script. But to your point, it was interesting that he wrote paperback originals, really. He was not, and only in Europe was he considered to be like a great American writer. Here, he was just like the guy writes cheap pulp paperbacks. But when he was dying, and as you said, he was a severe alcoholic, and when he was dying, he told his wife, "You'll see, once I'm dead, then my stuff is going to start making money." He did. And it was absolutely true. I mean, there was a period, this was the capper to like a decade of people finding his books and making them. The Killer Inside Me was made, and all kinds of stuff. But thank you for acknowledging that, and thank you for being so knowledgeable about Jim Thompson. Sometimes the actors say, they're like, who wrote that? I don't get it, but you know, thank you. But I have to ask how this was, you'd only made several films before this. You mostly did stage work. And how did you come to be cast in this film?
It was my third movie, and so I was in New York doing plays. I had been in the regional theater, which meant a lot to me, and then I moved to New York in my late 20s, and I was doing plays, and Stephen Frears was making Dangerous Liaisons, and Milos Forman was making a movie called Valmont, and I was up for both films. And I was up for the girl who gets the letter written on her ass in Dangerous Liaisons, like this tiny part. And then I was up for the lead in Milos Forman's movie. So I met Frears at that point and had a couple of meetings with him. And then I was cast in the lead in Milos Forman's movie. So they both made movies on the same subject. Dangerous Liaisons was made first. They went to Europe. They shot the movie just as we were going to Europe. They were returning. Then after we made our film, I got back to the United States, and Dangerous Liaisons was just coming out. And it was a big hit, and it was a big kind of amazing, movie. It was a great movie that Frears directed, and then ours came out, and it was kind of an international flop. And Milos Forman is this great director. It was much more lavish. I'm sure they spent much more money on Valmont. Anyway, so I had met him. And so then he was doing the Grifters, and I remember him asking Milos to show him some of Valmont. I think he did ask him. There may have been somebody else that was offered the part before me. I'm not sure. But so then I went to meet Frears again, but I didn't read or anything. I never, read. He just knew me, met me, and we chatted, and then he asked me to do it. That's sort of how it happened.
Yeah, interesting. And I have shown this film with Stephen, and he told me he gave you very simple and odd direction, I think. Not something that an actor would normally want to hear, like, I want you to do it like, and what was his suggestion to you?
Well, he suggested that I watch Gloria Grahame, but he didn't say to do her or anything. He just was saying, look, that's a suggestion. It was a great idea. It was a great suggestion. It was a delightful inspiration to study her and to watch her movies. So he said that, and then he also said, I want you to lighten your voice. He did say that. And I don't remember him saying a lot. He is such an extraordinary director. We were talking about it back there. The range of his movies, of course, since then, it's been a long time. He's made a lot of movies since then. But he works very quickly. He makes lots of movies. He moves very quickly from one to another. He is like a lot of very good directors, not overly, I never felt he was, he controls everything, but he hires people that he respects, and then he sort of, when everyone's discussing everything, questions come up, what are we going to do, how are we going to do this or that, he'll say, I don't know, and just sort of like let everyone have ideas, and really great with the camera, but it never feels like in this film, even with the stylishness of this movie, I never feel the director showing himself. I never feel the director is showing off. I feel like but the way the camera moves and that final scene between the two of them is extraordinary. It's a long scene. And
it's beautifully blocked out, and
right?
the way they move around each other. I actually think that the last 20 minutes or so of this movie is like peak noir. I mean, this is as dark and dreadful as I want a movie to go. I don't want to go much, I'm going to admit, I don't want to go much darker than this, but can you get much darker than a mother murdering her own son for the money? I mean, that's pretty dark.
Or that she'd be willing to sleep with him to get it.
Oh my God.
That's pretty dark. I know, that goes deep, right?
Yes, and Angelica is, as you
Superb.
say, she's
Just
unbelievable,
superb.
and that's the breathing and her crying.
Oh, that keening moment on the floor. And then I think that dress, that great dress with the crisscross back, I think that was a dress that she knew about. Maybe even she had it, but that she suggested it. That was the other thing I wanted to mention was the style of the movie, right? Like, what is style? How does style happen? And it's just a shared sense of reality. But the design choices were very strong. And Richard Horning designed the costumes. And what he did, I remember he had very strong ideas. He came in with them very clear. But that's a lot of what you see is the clothing and the way that the women are dressed, but also the hair. You can't underestimate. Sidney Cornell is a great hairdresser. She doesn't work anymore, but she did Angelica's wig. She put that wig on her every day. She did both of us. That's really hard. And then with me, I had like long straight hair. One day she came over, she cut my hair, she colored it, and she permed it all in one day. She did, and that is a lot. You know, we look at sets. I mean, in this one, the sets are extraordinary and the lighting and all of that, but sometimes we underestimate how important just this is. And if that works in a way, you can imagine with different hairstyles or different clothing, it would just be completely, it would be a whole different ballgame. But Richard Horning did all of the clothes, and he was extraordinary. And he's no longer with us, but he I think, had a huge contribution to the movie. Yes. Yeah.
And everything you're describing is so vitally important to the plot of the film, because there has to be a visual similarity between the two women as well, so that you could mistake it. Like when Henry Jones says, when Angelica walks in and he thinks it's you, like that's the whole thing right there, you know. But the other thing about the design of the film that is so impressive is, and this really hit me watching it this time, is that it is such a hybrid between classic 40s film noir and a modern film. Because as I'm watching this, I'm seeing, as you were describing, the costume design, it's very like 80s. You know, the tight stuff that you're wearing and your perm is a very 80s thing. But yet it still feels very much like classic 40s noir. Angelica's outfits are, I could totally see Barbara Stanwyck wearing this stuff, and as you say, Gloria Grahame. And the same thing is true with the script, that the dialogue is very much harkens back to 40s tough guy dialogue. You have a few lines in the film that are just like, what's the eating soup with a corkscrew or something?
He was so crooked he could eat soup with a corkscrew or something like that.
Yeah, which is like a total 1946 line of dialogue, you know. But I think that was all so wonderfully conscious. And there's also that moment when you said your voice had to be higher to be disarmingly adorable and cute, and then you find out this is the most avaricious bitch I've ever seen in my life, you know. But you drop your voice at one point when you're talking to John, and everybody suddenly realizes, I think that voice is all an act. She's putting that on, and it's so effective. It's great. Now, the scene, I have to ask, you mentioned J.T. Walsh, the scene, his breakdown scene, was that not the penthouse of the Roosevelt Hotel? Yeah, okay. I thought, I've been in that place. I've done an interview there, and I think that's where we actually... I think we did. That's where we were, yes. So he's a marvelous...
Professionally only. I just wanted to make that clear.
I was just going to let that hang out there for a second. No, we did a wonderful segment for Turner Classic Movies a few years ago, and I want to quickly segue to that, because it is so interesting to me that you did kind of Gloria Grahame inspired in some ways this character and performance, but then you would eventually play her in Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool, which I just want to take this opportunity, yes, please, which is a film that I dearly love. Paul McGuigan did a fantastic job with that film. The script is really great. His direction is phenomenal. The shifts in time and stuff. And I'm going there because you guys applauded, and I hope that wasn't just generous. I hope you actually have seen the movie. You are spectacular in that film. And I was very disheartened that that wasn't your 6th Oscar nomination for Best Actress.
Thank you. It's a movie based on a book, as you know, Eddie, for those of you who haven't seen it. And thank you for that acknowledgement of the movie. It's called Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool. And Gloria Grahame ended up in England working in the provincial theater. She had a rough life, fascinating life. She was married to Nick Ray, the director, and then she was married to Nick Ray's son. Not kidding, her stepson. Yeah, she married him. And then she ended up in England working in the regional theater. She was very serious about her work, and she got sick. She had been working in the theater, and she met a young guy, and they had a love affair, but they had broken up, and then she was in England, and she got ill, and she had breast cancer, and she was very sick, and she called up Peter, who's this lovely man from Liverpool, very much younger, and he took her in. His family took her in, and they lived in Liverpool. So she goes to the house in Liverpool where his parents live. They loved her. They had met her when they were going out together. They took her in and basically took care of her. And she ended up, she was there for a few weeks. I can't remember if it's in the movie, but in real life, they eventually put her on her plane. She flew back home. She literally died the next morning. And so Peter, who is this incredibly lovely man, wrote a book about it. And it's a very thin, slender volume. It's not exploitative at all. No. It's a beautiful book. And it's called Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool, which is about this experience. So anyway, we made a movie of it a few years ago, and I love the movie too, so I appreciate that. But that's Gloria Grahame. She was an incredible figure in film noir, and quite an interesting woman.
And there's a great, Elvis Costello wrote a great theme song for the film that's really fantastic. And I have to ask you this, how disappointing is it you put everything into that film. That film, you could just feel this magic that was happening when you became her in this film. And how disappointing is it when it just doesn't, that film, I was so upset that Sony didn't do anything with it, really.
Yeah, it is disappointing. And, I've made a lot of movies that I loved a lot that nobody acknowledged or didn't think was very good. So quite a few, in fact. And those, I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. It is heartbreaking, and it's also not, because for me, I made a few movies, a couple of movies before the Grifters that, and I'd never made movies before. I wasn't a kid, I was like almost 30 before I really started doing movies, and I made a couple, and the second one was this lavish period movie. I had never been to Europe, and I was in Europe playing a French aristocrat. It was like incredible, and it was the most fantastic experience. And my first movie was a Dan Aykroyd, John Candy comedy. So I'd made 2 movies and a great movie, The Great Outdoors. It's a miracle I ever worked again. And both of those, nothing happened. So I made, you go through the whole process of making a film, it comes out, it was like, oh, nothing happens. I had never had the experience of something having a life afterwards. So The Grifters was the first time. So yes, it is. It is kind of heartbreaking when that happens, but I guess I've been through it enough now. It doesn't, I feel slightly responsible, maybe. And then I also feel, that, maybe it wasn't that good. And then I also feel that for me, the experience is mine. So I've made it, and the experience of making it is mine. Whatever happens with the film. And that's actually more what you're left with. Like coming and seeing it today, I'm thinking, I like the movie very much. I love this movie. But I'm also thinking about, you know, just my own life. At the time, and this, and that was the driver, and that guy in the station wagon that used to pick me up, and just everything that happened in my own personal life that nobody here would have any association of. It takes a while. If enough time goes by when you're watching a movie you've been in, you begin to forget all that. At the beginning, you can't, you know, it's hard to see at all, because it's just, you know, when you've been in it. But it was, yeah, I just have a lot of memories.
Yeah, what at this point in your career? I mean, if you never made another film or did anything, I mean, you'd be getting lifetime retrospectives at this point, because your body of work is so exceptional. But at this point, what is it that that inspires you to take a project? Is it the character? Is it who you get to work with? The significance of the film? What is the deciding factor for you?
It's always a combination of things, and it always has been in terms of my own personal life and what's going on in my family life. That has also had to do with what I did and when I did it. And that still holds true. So it's the working in the company. That's the real aphrodisiac, is being in a group of people and trying to cook up ideas and having an idea about something, and then meeting with a costume designer or meeting with the director, or in the case of streamers, now I'm doing a second one right now, meeting with the showrunner, and just the joy of the craft. I really love the craft. I really do. I started out in the theater just because I loved it, and I felt quite awkward in movies for a while. It didn't feel comfortable to me. I was used to being on the stage and having a show run from the beginning to the end, and the life of the theater actor of 8 shows a week and all of that. So for a while, I felt really uncomfortable on a set. I felt comfortable speaking into a mic. It just felt odd to me. But then I fell in love with it. And now I love it. I feel very at home. I remember I did a television pilot when I was first starting, and I was so nervous, and I was the lead. I was the girl, and I was the lead, and I remember just being so nervous about like speaking to the prop person, and I remember the director kind of being a little bit impatient with me, like, ask for what you need, you know, you need the thing, ask for it. It was like, yeah, I need to do that. So now I know how to do that. But I love working in the company, I love working in a group, and I have sort of done a lot. So when I go onto a set and I see things, I think, that's a problem. That doesn't, yeah, you know, and when I started, I would never presume to say that, nor would I say it if I saw it in a script. That's how, you know, kind of, it was like, oh, I'm hired to do this job. It's not my job to have an opinion about the script, but I would think, you know, this section right here, that's kind of boring, and that doesn't quite work. And then I would see the movie. Shit, I was right. That is boring. That doesn't work. That switched, whatever. So, you know, anyway, I've learned a little bit over the years.
Because when you went to the American Conservatory Theater in my neck of the woods, I'm from San Francisco, so that's where you studied. And at that time, in the 80s, I don't think there were a lot, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of people coming into the movie business from theater. It seemed like that was, back in the 40s, everybody had done theater, but I don't know if it was that common anymore.
I think it's always been a thing where they go to New York, and people that are looking for actors, and it's also, yeah, I mean, I think so. I think there were people getting into movies from the theater, and they would come in and, you know, go to plays, and the casting directors would look around, and in those days they would put you on tape, they called it. So you would go into a casting director's office with a video camera, and they would shoot you, and then they would mail the videotape to the West Coast. And then if they were interested in you, they would fly you out. So yeah, technology's changed just a little bit.
Yeah. So I have to ask, because you impressed me so much with your Jim Thompson knowledge, do you read crime fiction? Do you read mysteries and things? Or?
I'm not a huge mystery reader, no. My mother, who is 96 and just moved in with me last year, loves murder mysteries. She loves them. In fact, my dad, as I mentioned, he died just a year and a half ago. He was 97. And the day after he died, and it was all very, how shall I say, very low drama in my house. Where they lived, where my dad died. But she was reading one the next day. I noticed that. So no, I don't read a lot of crime fiction. I need to read more, but no, I don't. I'm pretty choosy about contemporary fiction, I have to admit. And so, but I do occasionally.
Okay, well, I have one of mine out there in the lobby that I'm gonna give to you to give to your mom.
Fabulous.
So, yeah,
she would love that. I'm trying to always keep her in books. It's hard to keep her in books. She reads so much.
Great. I would be honored for you to give your mom
Wonderful.
this
Okay,
book.
cool.
I have so much more that I want to talk to you about, but I am getting the high sign since we have another show coming up after this. But I have to say, I'm not blowing smoke at you, Annette. Your career has been absolutely phenomenal, and what's coming up? What can we see you in next?
Well, we made a movie called The Bride about Frankenstein and his girlfriend. And Maggie Gyllenhaal directed it, and Christian Bale plays Frankenstein, and Jessie Buckley plays the bride. And I believe they've just moved the release date to next year. They were going to release it in the end of the year, but they're releasing it in March. So I play the doctor in that. And then right now I'm shooting a limited series called Lucky.
Wow. Okay.
It's a crime story, so I was thinking about that.
Okay. When you need to promote it, you just let me know. If it's a crime story, I'm all over it. Yeah, all in. Do you guys appreciate what a treat this is, that you got to see the Grifters with the fabulous Annette Bening?